Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most fundamental skills in Adobe Photoshop, selection methods. If you've ever wanted to isolate parts of an image, make quick edits, or create complex compositions, mastering selection tools is key. In this lesson, we're going to cover several essential tools that will help you make precise and efficient selections, whether you're working on simple or intricate designs. First, we'll explore the Select Subject option, a powerful AI-driven tool that can identify and isolate subjects in just one click. Next, we'll move on to the Curvature Pen tool, perfect for making smooth, free-form selections with precision and control. We'll also cover the Polygonal Lasso tool, which is ideal for creating straight-edge selections, great for architectural elements and other structured designs. Then we'll look at the Object Selection tool, which allows you to simply drag over an area, and Photoshop will detect and select objects automatically. Of course, we can't forget the classic marquee tools, useful for quick rectangular, elliptical, or single-row selections. Finally, we'll go through some essential selection options, like adding, subtracting, and refining your selections to get that perfect edge. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a solid understanding of how to use these selection methods to speed up your workflow and create professional-level results. So, let's jump in and start selecting. Let's go ahead and open image number 40 in Photoshop. As I mentioned in my previous lesson, it's highly advisable to duplicate the original layer from the Layers panel before making any edits. This helps you preserve the original image in case you need to go back and make adjustments later. Once you've duplicated the layer, rename it to Woman Figure for better organization. After that, turn off the visibility of the background layer by clicking the eye icon next to it. Now, make sure the Woman Figure layer is active so we can proceed with our selection. With the Woman Figure layer selected, go to the Select menu at the top of Photoshop. Click Select Subject. Photoshop will automatically detect and create a selection around the main subject in the image, in this case, the woman in the business suit. However, keep in mind that the Select Subject option may only detect the most prominent pixels in the image. It's important to verify that the selection border is accurately placed around the subject without any mistakes. If you notice any errors, you'll need to refine the selection by adding or subtracting areas from the current selection border around the subject. To do this, follow these steps. Zoom in on the document to get a closer view of the edges. Pan the document by holding the spacebar and dragging to inspect the selection border thoroughly. In this case, I can see that the selection border extends beyond the main subject. To fix this, I'll need to subtract the extra areas from the selection to ensure it's clean and accurate. To refine the edges, I can use either the Polygonal Lasso tool or the Curvature Pen tool. Let me walk you through how to refine edges using the Curvature Pen tool. The Curvature Pen tool allows you to create a precise path for selecting along the edges of your subject. Before we get started, let's first understand the algorithm behind the Curvature Pen tool. I have a new PSD document open on my screen to demonstrate this. Select the Curvature Pen tool. If you right-click on the Pen tool in the toolbar, you'll find the Curvature Pen tool. Then in the Options bar at the top, make sure you select the Path option. Click the gear icon in the Options bar and ensure the rubber band option is enabled. This will allow you to see a preview of the path you're drawing. You can draw curved paths by adding anchor points with the Curvature Pen tool. To close the path, simply click on the starting anchor point to complete the path. If you need to undo an action, press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac. To draw straight paths, double-click instead of single-clicking to add anchor points. For curved paths, just click once to connect the points with curved lines. Okay, now to refine the edges of the selection border with the Curvature Pen tool of this image, follow these steps. Begin by placing your first anchor point along the extended selection border. As you draw the path around the border, you may need to zoom in, zoom out, or pan the document for better accuracy. If you make a mistake, Press Ctrl Z or Command Z on a Mac to undo the segment. Continue adding anchor points to connect the paths and complete the shape. Once the path is complete, click the Selection button on the Options bar. Activate Subtract from Selection. Click OK to apply the changes. After following these steps, you should see that the selection border has been adjusted to fix the issue. Similarly, you should carefully examine the edges of the selection border to identify any areas that may need refinement by adding or subtracting selections. In this instance, the selection border extends beyond the subject. To correct this, I will subtract the selection using a path. I will follow the same steps with the curvature pen tool. Begin by drawing a path around the extended selection border. Now, instead of using the Selection button on the Options bar, right-click and choose Make Selection. Activate the Subtract from Selection option and click OK. Press Ctrl 0 or Command 0 on a Mac to fit the document to the screen. To remove the background from this image, you first need to select the background area. Currently, the selection border is around the subject. To select the background instead, you must invert the selection. Press Ctrl-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I on a Mac to invert the selection, which will switch the selection from the subject to the background. You can invert the selection again if needed to reselect the subject. Once the background is selected, press the Delete key to remove it. Okay, let's now focus on removing the background from this image. This image is a bit more complex than the previous one we worked on. Follow these steps to learn how to make a precise selection around the subject in order to remove the background. Start by duplicating the original layer and renaming it to something like Choir. Turn off the visibility of the background layer and keep the Choir layer active. Go to the Select menu and choose Subject. Observe the edges of the selection to ensure they accurately encompass the subject. If any refinements are needed, you may have to add or subtract from the selection to fix the edges. For example, if you notice that the selection border around the face area is inside the subject, you will need to add to the selection to correct this issue. Now, I will demonstrate how to use the polygonal lasso tool to refine the selection border. Select the polygonal lasso tool from the toolbar. Ensure the Add to Selection option is activated in the Options bar. Set the feather value to 0 or 1 pixels. Make sure anti-alias is enabled. Zoom in on the document to focus on the subject's face. Begin drawing the selection around the face by clicking to connect the paths. While drawing, you can zoom in and out or pan the document as needed. If you make a mistake, press the backspace key on your keyboard to undo the previous segment and then continue drawing. Upon reviewing the selection, you should see that it has been refined. Similarly, you should first focus on refining the edges using the Add to Selection option. I have identified a few areas in this image that need further refinement. Using the polygonal lasso tool, I will now address these areas by adding to the current selection. Follow along with the video and try the process yourself. Now that I've refined the selection border by adding to the current selection, the next step is to subtract areas that extend beyond the desired selection. You'll need to carefully examine the edges of the selection border and identify any areas that exceed the current selection. I've found such an area here, which I will now fix using the Subtract from Selection option. Activate the Subtract from Selection option with the polygonal lasso tool, and then draw a selection around the area you want to remove from the current selection, like this. Similarly, you'll need to locate any areas where the selection needs to be adjusted by subtracting. In this image, I've identified a few spots that require correction using the Subtract from Selection option. Follow along with the video and give it a try yourself. Now, I need to subtract the small white areas I've identified in the middle of the image. For this, I'll use the Magic Wand tool instead of the Curvature Pen tool or Polygonal Lasso tool. Select the Magic Wand tool and set the tolerance value to 20. Ensure the Subtract from Selection option is active. Zoom in on the document and click on the white areas to subtract them from the current selection. If needed, you can adjust the tolerance value by increasing or decreasing it for better accuracy. Now, I have a precise selection around the subject, ready for further edits. For example, if I want to remove the background, I would press Ctrl-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I on a Mac to invert the selection, then press the Delete key. At this point, I could either replace the background with another image or change the background color. To deselect the selection, simply press Ctrl-D or Command-D on a Mac. Give it a try yourself by removing the background of this image. First, select the kite using the Polygonal Lasso tool, then invert the selection and press the Delete key. Next, I'll show you how to select objects using the Object Selection tool. I've opened image number 19, and I've also created an A4 size document in CMYK color mode with a 300 ppi resolution. Let's say I want to copy some objects, like this eraser and this protractor, into the newly created document, enlarge them, and then print them out. Photoshop offers a powerful tool for this, the Object Selection tool. To access it, right-click on the Magic Wand tool, and you'll find the Object Selection tool. Make sure to activate the Add to Selection option. Once you've enabled the Object Finder option in the options bar, simply click on the object you want to select, and Photoshop will automatically select it. To copy the selected object, press Ctrl-C or Command-C on a Mac. Switch to your new document and press Ctrl-V or Command-V to paste the object. Next, press Ctrl-T or Command-T to activate the transform function. Using the transform handles, you can scale the object while holding the Shift key to maintain proportions. You can also rotate the object as needed. Once you're satisfied with the transformations, press the Enter key to apply them. Finally, using the Move tool, you can reposition the object on your page. Remember, when using the Move tool, make sure the Auto Select option is enabled and Layer is selected in the options bar. Now, follow the same steps to select the protractor using the Object Selection tool and copy it to your new document. And there we go. Finally, let's focus on the marquee tools. If you want to copy a specific part of an image to another document, you can use the rectangular marquee tool or the elliptical marquee tool to select a particular area. Select the rectangular marquee tool. Choose the new selection option. Set the feather value to 0. Keep the style set to normal. With these settings, you can drag to create a rectangular selection of any size on the image. Since the new selection option is active, drawing a new selection will replace the previous one. To draw a perfect square, hold the Shift key while dragging. If you need to move the selection as you're drawing it, hold down the space bar without releasing the mouse button to reposition the selection, then release the space bar and mouse button once it's in the desired location. With the elliptical marquee tool, you can create elliptical selections. To draw a perfect circle, simply hold the Shift key while dragging. Once you've made a selection using either the elliptical or rectangular marquee tool, you can move the selection by dragging it from inside to change its position. If you want to create a selection with a specific size, choose Fixed Size from the Style menu in the Options bar. Then, enter the desired width and height values in the corresponding boxes. For example, to create a 4-inch, 2-inch elliptical selection, type the values accordingly. You can also switch the width and height by clicking the arrow icon. After setting the values, click to apply the selection in the specified size and drag to move it before releasing the mouse button. Alternatively, you can release the mouse button and move the selection afterward by dragging inside it. These settings apply to the rectangular marquee tool as well. Now, let's say I want to copy part of this image using a circular selection. In the Style menu, select Normal. Hold the Shift key and draw a circular selection. Press Ctrl-C or Command-C on a Mac to copy the selected area. Move to your new document and press Ctrl-V or Command-V to paste it. Let me briefly explain what Feather does. Feather softens the edges of your selection, creating a smooth transition between the selected area and its surroundings. Now, using the same tool, I'll set the feather value to 50px. When I draw a circular selection again, copy it, and paste it onto my new document, you'll see a nice, soft-edged, feathered effect around the image. In this tutorial, you've learned essential selection methods to enhance your skills in Photoshop. Now, let's move on to the next lesson, where we will explore fundamental photo retouching techniques.